Hello. Today we are going to be speaking to Lena, coming to us from Florida, right near Tampa. Am I right?
Yep.
Yep. So
Welcome.
welcome. Thank you for all the reschedules, three busy schedules, different time zones. It can be really hard to schedule. So we appreciate that.
I
Yeah,
get it. Life is crazy. So I'm just grateful to be here and appreciate your guys' time as well.
thank you. I feel like we know you from all the reschedules. That's all right.
You know
I
what
know,
vacations I've been on, you know when I've been out of town.
yeah, your
You know all the
kids.
illnesses we have. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us your story. Jump in wherever you want to jump in. Excited to hear it.
Oh goodness. Let's see. So I am not originally from Florida. We had kind of mentioned that. I was born in New Jersey in the 80s, and I was placed immediately, at days old through a Catholic Charities in New York State area. And so then I was adopted shortly after that and was actually raised on Long Island. So I was raised an only child. Um, my adoptive parents couldn't have children, and so they had adopted me, but they were 40 at the time. And
Oh,
at that point, they I guess they wouldn't let them adopt other children after that. There was like a um age limit or whatever. So I had always asked for siblings. I was constantly like, oh, I want another, can you get another baby, another sibling?
Mm.
And so that was kind of what I had focused on. I had a very normal, I'm very grateful. Like I had a very normal childhood. My family was amazing. It was really, really awesome. Um, and they were very open about the fact that I was adopted. And so I was very grateful for that
Do
as
you,
well.
do you think that was due to them being a little older, like they had the maturity and
yeah. I was wondering that. That's true.
I think so. So interesting. That brings up the first interesting. I have all these little random interesting points of my story, I guess. But so we actually have a lot of families that they were friends with that adopted from the same agencies and similar situations. So I literally grew up around other adopted kids, which was very cool to me because I didn't feel as
Oh,
left
yeah.
out or as different, right? And so I think they all kind of communicated and kind of helped each other and supported each other from what I understand, and the agency at the time at least had
how did
told
they
them.
how did they find
Yeah, that's
so how did they find
interesting.
these friends that
So it
was there
actually
like
they were
something in the
friends
water in that
first.
town in New York that they couldn't conceive? Like a cluster
Right,
of like
maybe there's more to this.
infertility
Maybe I
issues?
should do a research.
Penny saver ad.
So yeah, so actually they were all friends first. And
Oh,
so yeah, and so one of their friends had blended family. They had adopted and biological children. And then the other one and myself they just had their adopted children, like my family and the other one. So I think they were all friends first, and it just kind of was, I hate to say it, but like a fad, like, oh hey, but they talked about it and they shared, and I think they got like referrals from each other for um like to use this
yeah.
agency. We had a good experience kind of thing. And so I think that the agency had kind of encouraged them to be open with us. And so we all knew and we were all friends. And it was kind of really helpful, I think, growing up around other adopted
Yeah.
kids too, because like I said, I just didn't feel as different, as awkward, as out of place or anything like that. So
I was
it was kind of cool.
in the
And did they
80s.
tell you? I'm
Yeah.
sorry, Louise.
No, in the 80s, were the families informed of more from, I'm always just curious what goes on in the
Trauma.
agency, trauma, any booklets or articles or books now?
Still no, huh? What year was this?
83.
Yeah.
Still nothing.
No.
Okay.
No, it was the savior narrative. It was that you're a gift,
Yeah.
the
Oh,
savior.
okay.
And it
Hmm.
was meant, as genuinely as it possibly could have been, given the time. Right now we know better, but I think they were right at the edge of like, they really truly didn't know better, right? Like after that, it starts to be like, you need to know better. But I feel like they were right at that cusp of,
Yeah.
Hmm.
it was
That
still
makes
tough
sense.
to.
It's interesting what you say about adopted friends because I was raised with one named Lynn. And if you're ever listening, Lynn, shout out. But we weren't, we were, I don't know, we were kind of thrown together, but I was glad to know she was adopted. Like just
Hmm.
this weird, we never talked about it, but just like, oh, she's adopted too.
I
So,
was adopted because of an adopted kid named Mark Nebel. His mom came over to my parents' house and they're like, adoption is the solution. And so Mark
Neville,
Nebel and I were kind of
shout
forced
out.
together. I just gave his last name. I don't even know where he is. I think I've seen him since I was a baby, but I remember him.
Not interesting.
And then I actually had run into, so oddly enough, like as if that wasn't weird, as I got older, I have like other adopted people have like appeared in my life. Like one of my best friends, she moved 3 houses down from me when we moved to Florida. I didn't know her, just met her. Turns out we're both adopted, both from New York. Like, and now she was in I was in her wedding. Like, she's the aunt to my
Yeah.
kids. Like, and then of course other people I've run into too. And so now even as an adult, I have my own kind of network of
That's
other
good.
adoptees that are close. And it's different now. As a kid, we didn't really talk about it. Like you said, we just
Right.
knew, but we didn't talk about it. But now as an adult, it's been really nice to have that support and understanding from people who, are truly get it.
Like me and my
And in
Sarah.
yeah. And in your era too, because we were from obviously the baby scoop where there
Yeah.
were just tons of babies, but it got less and less
Less. Yeah.
your era. So to find that is pretty random and great.
Yes, yes. So we had so that's how we ended up in Florida. My parents were at retirement age, so they had moved to Florida when I was in high school, and then I went to college here in Florida, and I was trying to decide what I wanted to do with my life because I really, at that point, was when I started to feel lost. Like I really had no clue. I just didn't know, and so I had started saying, "Oh, maybe I want to be a social worker because, and help people build their own families." Kind of, I was still in the fog of everything was
Yeah.
beautiful.
Right.
Not that,
Yeah.
mine was beautiful, but not everything was beautiful. And so I started, decided to major in social work in school. And so I started doing research and I started, taking classes and stuff. And then there was like I had to write a paper on why I wanted to be into social work or whatever. And so this was still early 2000s and you could use the internet as a source back then. It was, as long as it wasn't like a random website, but like an actual agency website or whatever. So I had actually used adoption.com as one of my sources for my papers. And back then they had message boards and this is before social media, right? And so you could go on the message board and it said, the thing pops up and says, "Oh, are you an adoptee or a biological parent? Are you searching for your family?" Blah, blah. And I was like, oh, I would totally, be open to meeting family. And I really still was like, I want another sibling. I really want, like, my whole life, I just felt that whole, like, I needed siblings or I had siblings or I wanted to, whatever it was, that pull. And so I registered on their website and that's how I ended up in reunion with my paternal biological family. They found me on this adoption.com website. No DNA, no nothing.
Super random.
And it was your father you found.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
your father's family had put themselves in there.
Yeah. His sister and him had both put themselves in there.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Now I'm really curious to hear the story.
And before you go on, when you were in the high school, kind of feeling lost, college, pre-college years, I know you were close to your parents. I had that too, but were you also like, okay, I'm not really like them. What is my thing? But you don't want to talk about it to hurt feelings, blah, blah, blah.
100%. 100%. Right. And not for anything that they did or didn't do. You just start to feel it, I think, at that age, like puberty and just coming into your own as an adult, right? It was just.
Yeah.
Had they given you any like non-identifying information? Did they have any kind of narrative from the adoption
They
agency?
had more than they gave, of course.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because you're a child and you're too young. And so I knew some, like they told me that my biological mother had played the flute and I played the flute in elementary school. And they had told me that she had scoliosis because I had some mild pre-scoliosis issues that at the time, actually, when I was growing, I was having some issues. And but that was kind of it.
Like cherry
But
picking things like, oh, you have scoliosis. Oh, your mother happened. Like, how would they know that random thing, but not more?
right. And there wasn't a ton. I'm not saying that they had a
Yeah.
ton, but they had more than they gave, even
Yeah.
as I was an adult. And they didn't then fully disclose everything until I came back and said I had found my biological family. So
Yeah.
Okay, so go on. You find the
oh
paternal
yes. So
side.
yeah, so my aunt, so this part of the story, and I just have to disclaimer, I don't remember much of it. I completely disassociated. I was there, but my friends and family can tell you much better than I can. So I'm only relaying a secondhand story that I apparently experienced that I have no recollection of. But uh, so we connected somehow online, email, I guess, or messaging on these message boards. My aunt had told my biological dad, and then he reached out and we exchanged emails, apparently with my roommates too. And then at some point, I feel like he emailed us like a description of my adoptive parents because I was like, how do I know? Like, you're some weird dude on the internet. I have no way to prove that, like, we're related, right? But he sent the description of my adoptive parents, like that they chose out of
Oh,
their
book.
like bio. And then I knew, I was like, oh yeah, that's my adoptive parents. So like we're definitely, it was definitely related. And so then after that, we had talked on the phone and he had made this like beautiful web page that of course I know I read, but I don't remember it, but it was beautiful. It had this really nice, like just like letter. And it was back in the day when you could put like glitter and all these cool things on these web pages. It was really, really, really sweet. Like
He had been missing you all these years.
every day.
Oh,
Oh,
and was he still in the Jersey tri-state
Mhm.
area?
Yeah.
yeah, I'm
Hmm.
curious how this came about. Like how
Yeah.
because they chose your parents out of a, yeah.
Yeah, so she was 17-ish and he was 20. Yeah, because we're 20 years apart. And so she was still in high school and her family was not supportive. And I mean, there's plenty more to that, but for her own privacy, they were not supportive. And so um that was really their best um the best option at the time for them. And so he was involved though. He knew um that she was pregnant and he was there when I was born. In fact, um, she couldn't, didn't want to hold me before they placed me, but he did. And he like, to this day, I just think that's really awesome, like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because that I'm incredibly hard, like not knowing that we would be reunited, right? Not knowing what would happen and still choosing to, put yourself out
And
there for that kind of, heartbreak and pain. And
I have a
And did
question
they
about,
break up after that?
yeah, they did. Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
And
I mean, I think they tried.
did his family try to keep you at all? Because I know you said he and his family.
They were going through, his parents were going through a divorce at the time.
Hmm.
Oh, and he's
So
twenty.
they wanted to, and they would have otherwise, but they just didn't know where they were going to end up and what was going to happen, with his parents' divorce, like, so it was just it was truly bad timing. It was not, and now this is 20 years later, like, I know that it was not lack of love. It was not lack of, willingness. It was
Yeah.
just horrible timing.
Yeah. So
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
so
Why don't
what,
you don't remember that time at
Oh,
all?
like the initial, I mean, I
Interesting.
know it happened, but I don't remember it. No.
That's
I,
interesting.
I understand I've disassociated from many things
Mm-hmm.
in my life and have big, big
Gaps.
gaps and blank spots. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's a protective measure.
Oh, absolutely. And now that I've, finished my degree and I know that that's, now I know, now I get it, and now I know why. So at least it was helpful to understand why. I have no
Yeah.
or minimal recollection, right? Like I remember some of it, but most of it's because it was retold to me too.
So then what happens? You connect on these message boards. He makes you this beautiful. Then he tells you about your mother.
Yes. I think it was actually when we met in person. No, you're right. It wasn't. So he told me, and he said that they had kept each other's contact information for all these years just in case. Like, even though they broke up and they weren't really able to have a relationship, they kept, like, they updated each other with their addresses and stuff. And so he said that if I wanted to send her a letter, that I could mail it to him, and he would, in like 2 envelopes, and then he would address it and mail it to her just for her privacy and whatever. And so he did. I sent it to him with a picture of me and everything, and like double envelopes, and then he sent it to her. And then he tried to reach out to her by the phone too.
Mhm.
But she didn't respond. I think she either hung up on him or said, I can't talk, or, just like a short, quick, like she knew exactly who it was and said no, and then never responded to my letter
Letter. Still.
Like ever?
ever, like 22 years. So
You're kidding.
Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
not even like I'm sorry, I can't. Like I would have accepted, like, I can't do this, or it's too much. Like, I get it, I'm a therapist. Like, I understand enough to know that, like, sometimes you can, and that's fine, because you need to do what's good for your mental health, just like I needed to do what's good for my mental health. But to ignore me and act like, it wasn't even,
Yeah.
I don't even exist. But so about 4 years ago, no, 2021, so like 3 years ago now, I found her on social media,
Oh,
because, the world is very different than it was in 2001 when I first started, interacting with
yeah.
everyone. And I found her on social media, and I sent her a message, a different message, very different message than my initial letter when I was 19, right? Like, I'm in a different place. And so it was still nice and respectful, but it wasn't like, oh, please accept me, please talk to me. Like,
Yeah.
so I sent a message, and she deleted and blocked me
Wow.
No.
without a response either. Same thing.
Does
Just
she
not.
have children?
She has two
Other
I'm
children?
guessing.
Um, have you thought about reaching out to them?
I have. I thought about it, but I
I
don't
mean,
know.
clearly not clearly, probably hasn't told them. So, but they'd probably, I
How
just
old
feel
are
like
they?
In their 20s.
Okay, they're adult. Yeah.
My half sister is engaged, and she's getting ready to get married.
I
And I'm not in the business of ruining anybody's life, right? So I don't want to just like bowling ball myself into their life and just, so maybe after she passes, I might be
well, she's
willing
only in her
to.
50s. It might be like a
I know.
long time.
I know. I'm like, that's how old they are.
Plus, what
Yeah.
about your health history? Have you tried that angle? Like, look,
Oh
can you
yeah.
give me some health history?
Oh
Nothing. She
yeah,
will
they
not.
had friends of like friends, I think, at some point, like, reach out, and like I was like, hey, because like I've been going through health stuff now that I'm in my 40s, and I'm not,
Yeah.
healthy teenager anymore, and I have autoimmune issues, like, all the adoptee
Yeah. Right. All the
Mhm.
typical.
cocktail.
But who knows, like, right, what if it's genetic? And so my biological dad has 3 other children. So I
So,
ended up having 3 half siblings that I do know. And my youngest brother was diagnosed with lymphoma in
Mm,
sorry.
2016,
yeah.
16, right? Or 15, 16, shortly after my daughter was born. And so he passed in 2018.
Oh,
He was only
Sorry.
23.
Wow.
And
That's
so that got me really asking about, like, medical, like I really wanted to know, like, medical information. But
so mutual friends reached out and nothing
I
back.
think, I can't remember if it was someone, I don't remember the details, or if it was like I don't remember the
Yeah.
circumstances, but we tried to say, like, hey, does anybody think like anybody would, that she would talk about any of that? And it was just a no, like, she's not going to. So,
Yeah.
wow. Well,
but yeah, so I mean,
it sounds like she disassociated,
oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly.
you
Absolutely. It
know?
just sucks.
It
Like, even though
does
I
suck.
Yeah.
understand it, it doesn't make it any less miserable, I guess, right?
No, it's
But
funny because I was going to give you some brave advice, but I don't take my own brave advice, so I won't. Because I have two
I
half
know
sisters
Louise has some
also.
sisters. I
mm,
want her to
And I watch them on Facebook. Not really. There's
Yep.
only one on Facebook, and I can't see much, but I can see a little. And it's like, oh, like, and we're so similar, we're a few months apart and all that stuff. But the dad is the blocker, and then I have to make a decision, right? And so the
Right.
bowling ball is a good analogy. You're like, yeah, okay, let me roll that in there.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just not.
I'm
The thing
sad
for
for
me
you.
is
Yeah.
that I mean, I'm sad, yes, but I'm also like I'm good right
That's,
now,
yeah.
right? Like I
Yeah.
have done come out of the fog the past like 4 years. I have done the work for myself and my own health, and I don't really know that like diving into someone else's problem is gonna benefit me in any way. Like if she was ready and willing and want,
Yeah.
great, 100%. I'm always here. I'm not gonna pull her through or pull them through, right? Because even if and I 100% do agree, I have the right to contact them if I want to. Like they're adults, like I could certainly, reach out, but then it's gonna cause like the bowling ball thing, like it's gonna cause more ripple effect, more things, and so I'm like, I don't, and then I don't want to be responsible for that, and I don't want to have to deal with it because I've already dealt with my own stuff and I'm already in a good place, and so I don't really, I mean,
Yeah, you can pause it for
yeah.
Yeah.
now. Have you done DNA? Like I was just thinking as
I
a backdoor
haven't, but
what?
it would be interesting.
Because
Yeah, so
then
Right.
that would be my,
they
They could
might
be
say,
on
"Hey,
there.
who's this?" And then it could be them reaching out to
yeah,
you.
so
So
that
there's
would be
another option.
yeah, that would probably be what I would do if I was to take the next step forward. That would be what I would do. Yeah. I've thought
Yeah.
about that a lot more. Like much more likely that I would do that to accidentally connect with family
Exactly.
members than yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Does your biological father, was he surprised by this reaction? Because they kept up, like she shared addresses and information,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is,
He was very surprised.
yeah,
He expected at least for her to have some sort of decency of a conversation or something. And so, but he has been honestly, I couldn't have made it through all of this without him. Like he has
oh,
been so supportive. Like
I'm so glad you're close to him.
I
That's
know.
really, aw.
so yeah, I'm very lucky. Like and I mean, he literally has just, I can't even explain the things that he said that and done and just been like so supportive. And I always was like, oh, I'm missing a piece of my puzzle. I don't have like my, and but now I don't feel that way. I feel like I'm exactly where I need to be. And so
Yeah.
I'm not, I mean, it sucks. The sibling thing sucks because all I ever wanted was siblings.
Right.
And now I lost one of my siblings, and I'm like, what if something happens to them before I ever, get to meet them? Like my kids know all three of my siblings. I mean, both my kids remember my brother that died. Like he was their uncle and he was a huge part of their life. And so like that's a really nice relationship. And I know that they could have that too, but I'm like, you know what? Sometimes I'm okay. I keep my circle small. I keep the people that truly want to
Yeah.
be there, and and I don't want to put my other siblings in a bad place. Like if they have to choose between their mother and me or something like that, like I don't.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. It's a lot to
Um,
contemplate.
I have how about your adoptive parents? Like, how did
Yeah.
have they dealt with reunion and have they met? And has it been a thing?
so yes, and they have been very gracious in the sense of as gracious as they could be. Um, I didn't tell them for a year, and that was my mistake. If I could change anything, I probably would have told them sooner, but it was a tough time. Like we were going through um me growing adolescence, being independent, feeling different. And so we were not close at the time when I found them. And so I was like, you know what? Let me just show them that I've known them for like a year and nothing changed, right? Like I'm not deserting them. I'm not, disowning my adoptive family. And so, but I was 19. I mean, I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
So I waited this year to tell them, and I regret it, but it is what it is now. I can't
I
change
mean, you
it.
were so young too. I mean, like,
I know.
uh,
So I told them, and then that's when I got all the rest of my like information. And so it turns out that they had left, like my biological mom had left a letter with me and a ring that my biological dad had given her, and he thought it was gone. Of course, my records were burned in a fire, with the
Okay.
air quotes, you know.
Yeah.
So I had called to try and find them, and they were gone. And so he thought all of this was gone, but the whole time that my parents had it, which was great. I'm glad that, you know, they had it. So that's when they gave it to me finally. And so I have the letter from her, and I have the ring that he had given her. And so they were, you know, undoubtedly I would be pissed. Like, I get it. They were shocked. They were not okay in the beginning, but I ended up bringing my siblings down to Florida one at a time to meet my parents, and they fell in love with my siblings because they're just the best. And they knew that I always wanted siblings too. And so, you know, it worked out really well. So they met all my siblings, and my adoptive dad loved my littlest brother. Like, the two of them were very cute together. Like, he was like, I like him. He's so cute. And I was like, I know. So, and then I got married up north because all our family was still up north. We were the only ones in Florida. So I invited my biological family. They were at my wedding. My dad and my aunt and my grandmother and my sister was in my wedding.
Oh.
So yeah, so and my parents were okay with it. I mean, I don't know that they could have said no. I mean, I'm an adult, but they were very gracious and very welcoming and very nice. Like, it was never a
Did
bad
both of
thing.
your dads walk you down the aisle?
No, just my adoptive parents, both my mom and dad, my adoptive mom and dad walked me down the aisle together. I didn't have a relationship that strong with my biological dad at the time either. Because I was still kind of figuring it out. And I mean, they raised me, and so it was, you know, it
Yeah.
seemed okay. We had like a dance together. Him and I had a dance together, and, you know, like, so we had a picture together and stuff. So I mean, I was definitely try to incorporate my biological family as much as I could. But at the time we weren't as close. We've become really close like the last, I don't know, probably since my brother got sick, I would
Yeah.
say, and since I started having kids, now that I'm a parent, like, him and I have become really close. So
It changes your perspective having the
Mhm.
child, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like, now, yeah.
Have you, now that you're a therapist, are your adoptive parents trauma informed about adoption now? Like, understanding
Oh, your
the
face.
relinquishment trauma? No, I see by your face that is a no.
No. And I know I should, and I know my therapist said the same thing. All the people I've talked to, I know, but they're in their 80s. What am I going to do? I'm
Right.
not changing the world. They're not passing on any of their lack of knowledge to anybody else. They're not, you know, out there like going, oh, you're wrong. So I'm like, I just
Yeah.
respect them, and I'm letting them live their life at this point. Like, I just
I know at
don't.
this age, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to you just have to, like, I know, reminding yourself older.
Yeah, I
Not,
educate younger people. I educate, you know, friends,
Mhm.
family that are able to be changing their mind and at a stage where they can. But and
Mm-hmm.
my mom struggles, I'm sure she does, because there was a time when she would treat me differently. Like, every time that I would go visit my biological family, like, she would kind of like ice me out for like a week when I got back.
Yeah.
But I
I
don't
went
even
through a
know that
little bit
she
of that.
noticed.
I went through that, like a little bit of not telling if I was going to see. And in
Mm-hmm.
my wedding too, was kind of the opener. And now I have regrets too, like, oh, I didn't get as close as I could of these things. But I think in your own time, listen, I told my parents right away and they were still angry. Okay. And then they came around later, but they can be angry a year later. They can be, it's whatever you have to
Yeah,
go
I don't
through.
think there was any, yeah, there was no
There's no
win
win.
situation.
No,
Yeah.
everyone has to process their own,
Well,
like you
your
said.
story is really another example of the complexities and layers and grief and joy. I mean, it's just, there's so much, and still, you know, protecting
Yeah.
people who could have informed themselves along the way and don't. And
Yes. My kids know. My 9 and 13-year-old are very informed, and they very much understand everything. And that's my only goal, right? Like, so if
that's
Yes.
fantastic.
I
Yeah.
can help the next generation of, you know, my kids, and they were confused at first. It's hard to explain, but as they've all gotten older, they have,
Yeah.
you know, been able to understand more and more of it. And it was funny, we were watching some commercial for like Legacy Box or something, right? And my Right. Those are always the great
There was
Right?
actually a commercial.
Yes, no, there is. I've seen
Yeah.
it.
And so my daughter, she was maybe 7 or 8 at the time, maybe 8. And she goes, Mommy, you can't do that, right? Because you don't know your other mom. She calls her my other mom because, biological, big terms, big words. And I was like, you're right. I don't know her. I said, but I have everything I need. I have you. I have, your papa and your grandma. I have our other papa. I have our other grandmothers. Like I said, I have what I need. I don't, I'm good. But, she even could identify that from a commercial. She could infer, like,
Yeah.
understand that my situation is complicated and that it's sad that she doesn't want anything, not even a conversation or whatever. I mean, even my 8-year-old could have figured that out. So I was like, yeah, it's sad, but I'm also really happy and I'm in a good place. And I have my adoptive family and my biological family on my dad's side. So
You never know what will happen
No,
because
yeah.
she is still, she's in her 50s. Something
a
could
lot
shift for her.
changes in your 50s.
So you never know.
Yeah. And yeah, and that's what I said to my daughter too. I said, if she ever, decides she wants to have contact and, I'm here, but I'm also not forcing it. I'm not, inserting myself somewhere that I'm not
I think
respected
you
or
should do the
valued.
DNA because I've done my DNA and I sit there with not my sisters are not on there because I know their names, but my cousins are, and they just kind of blocked me, 2 of them, but they know, like someone knows, there's somebody who knows something, like you're putting it out there. So say
Just a
one of your
little.
sisters is on there because it's a thing in your 20s, right? Do the DNA. You never know because you could have a relationship that way, and maybe that softens your biological mother because it comes through a different means,
Right.
right?
I didn't force myself.
Yeah.
Right. If they stumble upon it. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't
Maybe
know.
I'll do that for Christmas.
When you're ready, when
Yeah.
you're ready, you still, it's
Stay in touch about
a
it.
work in progress.
Yeah. Oh, always. I mean, yeah, just because I'm in a good place now, I'm not
Yeah.
perfect either in any way. I just am like, okay, I'm cruising for now. So we'll see
I
how that
understand. I'm in a good place too. And it's kind of like, do I want to rock that boat? And
Yes.
yeah, it's a lot.
100%.
You have to do it when you want to, everybody in their own time, right? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting what Sarah was saying because you're in the 80s, we're in the 60s, but not that much different.
I feel like I
Yeah.
was like the tail end of it, like, like where some of the older school stuff was still very much
But
going
I'll
on.
tell you what, I've talked about this before, but there's this somebody I know on Instagram who dated somebody I knew, and she's like a fashion designer, and she had a post like a year ago. We finally, went through, they got a baby of color. And they already had 2 biological kids, and she went through this whole thing about don't let anything bring you down. Adoption is hard, but it's worth it in the end. And I'm like, so I responded, about, I hope that you will read books and inform yourself on the trauma of adoption. And, but everybody in the comments, I'm telling you, like 1,000 comments. Oh my gosh, congratulations. And keep up the good work. Thank you for doing this for that
Oh,
baby. And like,
and what a great service you're doing to that baby.
yes,
Right.
still the savior narrative.
Oh
And
yeah.
this was
Right now.
2023, a year ago.
Yeah.
She had no clue about the books that I told her to read
No.
about adoption trauma, no clue at all. So
Yeah.
it's
It's still
still,
yeah, it's still happening, right? And so that's why if nothing else, I can educate my kids so that they can
Mhm.
Yeah,
educate,
Their
people that they
friends,
come
and
in contact with,
that's
right?
right.
To stop it from,
it's going to
you
be a
know,
long, long, long road, but at least,
I think yeah,
good
the
thing about
conversation.
technology is the ability now to talk about it in a wide platform. So,
Yeah. It is
well,
it is still the thing. And so thank you for saying and coming on it, and it's not just baby scoop era. So it's nice to
yeah.
have you in that way.
Thanks.
yeah, thanks for coming on and sharing with us, and keep us
Mhm.
posted on what you decide to do.
Yes, I'll let you know
Yeah,
if I
yeah,
submit my DNA.
yes, we'll be so
You have to stay
curious
in
because,
touch with us. Yeah.
yeah. Thank you, Lena. So nice to meet you.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you
Lena.
both. It was awesome to meet you too.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.